Okay, so now what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about somatic motor pathways. That's going to be abbreviated here as SNS, but for somatic nervous system. I want you to keep in mind somatic means that we're talking about communication to the voluntary skeletal muscles. Okay, so to give these motor commands, it's going to take two neurons. We have what's called an upper motor neuron. It's going to be more superior. We have a lower motor neuron. That's generally going to be more inferior. Now keep in mind that we start in the brain and we send the nervous impulse out to the periphery. So it's opposite direction of a sensory impulse. Okay, and so that's what this picture is showing. We've got the upper motor neuron in red, starting in the brain and ending either in the brain stem, or in this case starting in the brain and ending in the spinal cord. It hands off the signal to the lower motor neuron here in black, which is going to, in this case, it's going to start in the brain stem and go out to the skeletal muscles, or in this case down here it starts in the spinal cord and again goes out to the skeletal muscles. Now we're going to have three pathways, just like sensory we had three pathways. Here we're going to have three pathways as well. We have corticospinal. Cortico refers to the cortex, and specifically the primary motor cortex. If you remember from chapter 14, this is the part of the brain that initiates all voluntary movements. Okay? And so we've got a pathway, which is the larger one, and then within that we have two possible tracks, the lateral corticospinal and anterior corticospinal. Okay. So if we look at this a little more closely, upper motor neuron starts in that cortex. It is going to go down here. Okay. Now, if it has decussation in the midbrain and goes out to the skeletal muscles here, it's probably going through a cranial nerve because it's coming out of the midbrain. Same here at the medulla oblongata. It would be coming out of the medulla oblongata, therefore it would be using a cranial nerve. If it goes down to the spinal cord and then the lower motor neuron comes out of the spinal cord, it is going to be a spinal nerve. Okay. So notice signal for the red upper motor neuron starts in the cortex, and it can go one of three locations. Midbrain, it'll end in the medulla oblongata, or it will end in the spinal cord in the gray horns. Then it's going to hand it off to the white lower motor neurons, cell body here in the gray horn, here in the medulla oblongata, here in the midbrain, and then goes out and the signal ends at the skeletal muscle. Okay. Okay, so a couple of things that I would like to point out. Okay, one, this upper motor neuron, it can go through decussation at the medulla oblongata at the pyramids. Okay. After it goes through that decussation and continues down the spinal cord, that is the lateral corticospinal tract it will take. Okay. If it waits and doesn't go through decussation at the pyramids, but waits until down in the spinal cord to go through decussation right before it hands off the signal to this lower motor neuron, then this tract right here is the anterior corticospinal tract. Okay. And again, just like you did before with the upper, or with the first, second, and third order neurons for the somatic sensory pathways, I want you to do the same thing for the upper and lower motor neurons for the somatic nervous system. Where does the signal begin? Where does it end? And where is the cell body? Okay. Just a couple of other things that I'll point out. You do have this medial pathway, okay, and that's going to really be controlling subconscious movements. It will synapse on these same lower motor neurons, so it's going to synapse on the white neurons, okay? but it is not going to be starting from this primary motor cortex. It is going to be all of those other brain structures that we talked about that help with subconscious movements. Okay, and so again, you've got 3 tracks: vestibulospinal, that's subconscious control of posture and balance; tectospinal, that's going to be coming from the superior and inferior colliculi, those reflexes to respond to sound and light; and then reticulospinal, that's going to be coming from that reticular activating system. And then finally, the lateral pathway, that's going to help control muscles that are performing precise movements in the distal limbs. Okay, and that's going to use the rubrospinal tract. So this image right here, which you can also find in your textbook, this is going to be helpful in helping you to identify those specific tracks in the white column area.